My wife asked me when I came home from doing my first 500, she said, I never asked you, but just out of curiosity, she says, any idea what that pays? And I said, it never came up because I said I couldn't put a price tag on making a dream come true. And I literally didn't know what I got paid until I got the check in the mail, Dave.
Hi, I'm Dave Calabro, and I've covered some of the biggest moments in sports. But the stories that matter most are the ones that you rarely hear, because the game is decided long before the final whistle or the checkered flag. These are the people who make the big plays. Welcome to Playmakers. Brought to you by Indiana Members Credit Union.
Meet Chip. 30 years ago, he started a small business with a big idea. Today, there's a new building, a new fleet of equipment, and a new era of leadership. But we know Chip, and at Indiana Members Credit Union, we know he plans to keep growing, building business with the next generation. IMCU is here to help with secure and simple account management tools and commercial financing to grow business. Today, it's all about Chip. Tomorrow, it's all about you. Because at IMCU, it's you that matters.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Playmakers. Dave Calabro at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway as we count down to the 110th running of the Indianapolis 500. We've heard from a bunch of drivers this month. I thought it'd be fun to talk to Mark Jaynes, the radio voice of the Indy 500, heard around the world. Mark, you and I go way back.
We did, for sure.
That means we're old, right?
I think so. We worked pits together a couple of times.
You have a great memory. Yeah, back in the day.
I won't know where I parked when I leave here, but I do remember working pits during an IndyCar race.
Let's just start with the lead. I mean, what a joy it is. What a blessing to be able to call the Indianapolis 500 on the radio.
I mean, Dave, my first year, 96, I was a pit reporter, and I went home, and my wife said, how do you think it went? I said, well, I think they were happy, but I said, if I don't do it again, I got to do it once, and that was more than I ever imagined. And so for 30 years, as they say, I've been playing with house money. In turn 3 for 15 years, and then the opportunity came about to become the voice of the 500, just the 6th in 70-plus years. And it's just a dream come true for a kid from a small town. For sure.
I know you and I have similar stories because I was that way with Tom Carnegie. I think I'm one of 3 or 4 guys that have been the voice of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway when you're here. So you and I share the same kind of passion and kind of career paths.
Yeah.
Tell people where you grew up. Let's go back to the very beginning.
Monrovia High School, and is where I graduated from, and I grew up there. It's crazy because that's such a small town. It's about 30 miles west of Indianapolis. And there's so many people connected to Monrovia that have been involved in the 500 over the years. The Bettenhausen family, Arthur Newby, one of the founders, was born there in Monrovia. Kyle Moyer, who's with Arrow McLaren, and Bree Watson and Mason Hadley are both Monrovia grads that are on his crew, and the list goes on and on and on. And it's just indicative of the impact and the influence that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway has statewide and even obviously nationally and worldwide.
But when did you get the 500 bug? Were you a kid?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, in the backyard with my parents, just like you, listening to it, and then had an opportunity to start coming to the racetrack. My first year here was in the fall of 1971. We took a field trip to the old museum that was up at 16th and Georgetown, which had about 10 cars in it.
Yes.
And I bought an Al Unser postcard and an Art Pollard postcard. And I saw that Johnny Lightning special, and man, I was hooked. I thought this was the coolest place I'd ever seen in my life. And then Mark Donahue was my first favorite driver, but I think my interest really went up in about 1973, 74 when the Bettenhausen family moved from Tinley Park to just a mile from me. And I became friends with the family and friends with his twin sons, Todd and Kerry.
I'm laughing. Same experience for me. Field trip, old museum, walked in. I saw Mark Donahue flashing by, and I went, wow, I'm kind of hooked on this sport. Kind of amazing. So then you started playing radio. Did you play you were a radio guy in high school?
Oh, yeah. My 5th grade principal, my elementary school principal, I came off the playground one day, and I'd been playing softball, and he asked me what I thought I wanted to do with my life someday, and I said, I'm going to be a Major League Baseball player. And he said, well, you might want to rethink that because you're not very good. I've watched you play softball the past couple of days, but he said, you can't keep your mouth shut. You love sports, and you should think about a career in broadcasting and journalism. And that was 1975. And for whatever the reason, that stuck with me. And I asked my parents for a realistic cassette recorder, and I would sit in my living room floor and I would watch baseball games and football games and do play-by-play. Then I'd make up mock Indy 500s, and friends of mine would play the drivers of the day, JR and Al and Bobby. And it's cool to think that all these years later, I got to interview a lot of those guys. So, yeah, I mean, it was a bug that broadcasting bit me very early on in my life. And my big break came my sophomore year in high school when I started working part-time for the radio station in Martinsville, Indiana. And that's kind of what got my career started. So.
I was in Lebanon. What, you were in Martinsville? I was in Lebanon.
Yep.
Working every shift that was horrible, right?
Christmas music.
Hey, can you work Christmas?
Yeah, Christmas music spectacular. From 11 at night till 7 in the morning, I played nothing but Christmas music. We took 3 commercial breaks an hour, and I did a forecast at 11. And I was playing stuff like Steve and Edie's Christmas Carols, Frosty the Snowman by the Brady Bunch. And I remember I got to my parents' house for Christmas morning. My mom had an Elvis LP, Christmas LP on the turntable, and I said, I can't. I'm sorry, I'm done. I just can't. No more Christmas music, please.
And if you got to read a weather forecast in the break, and do a little segment, it was kind of cool, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was nice to get your voice on the air for sure.
And so then you got in Terre Haute. You were doing radio and TV?
That was my big break. I actually did 2 stints in Martinsville and 2 stints in Terre Haute. My second stint in Terre Haute was it began in 1994. And our boss was also an entertainment director at the Indiana State Fair, and I was one of his assistants. And I met John Royer, who was our longtime affiliate relations director.
Great human being, by the way.
And John liked me and offered me the opportunity to connect to Bob Jenkins. And the rest, as they say in history, started in 1996. And I remember one of the other things my wife asked me when I came home from doing my first 500, she said, I never asked you, but just out of curiosity, she says, any idea what that pays? And I said, it never came up because I said I couldn't put a price tag on making a dream come true. And I literally didn't know what I got paid until I got the check in the mail, Dave.
Yeah, I was the same way on the PA. You did this because you absolutely fell in love with it.
Right.
It was your passion, and here you are. Yeah. So then you met Bob Jenkins.
Yeah.
And then you started kind of back channel working some things here?
I mean, these names will mean a lot to you because, they were the legends in media. I mean, I walk in the old offices downstairs with the old grandstand configuration, and it's Bob Jenkins and Gary Lee and Howdy Bell and Chuck Marlowe and Jerry Baker and Ken Double, and the list goes on, Bob Lamey. And I'm thinking, man, I don't belong in this room with these guys, but they were so welcoming of me. And, and then I worked closely with Mike King, our longtime anchor. We worked together in Terre Haute for a number of years. And I just Doug Rice from the Performance Racing Network. We share duties with them on the Brickyard, and I've worked some races for PRN. All of those guys, I learned something from each and every one of them. And then, of course, 2 wonderful years working with Paul Page and hearing all of Paul's stories and learning a lot about managing a broadcast and being an anchor and things of that nature. I mean, when the opportunity came, because of the people that I surrounded myself with, I think I was pretty well prepared, or I thought I was. I mean, nothing really prepares you for it until you do it, as you well know.
Yeah.
But my influences were just some of the greatest motorsports broadcasters of all time.
Was there one, like Tom Carnegie was very instrumental in my life, and a guy by the name of Hilliard Gates, who was a big broadcaster in the state of Indy. Who was the guy that kind of took you under their wing the most? Was it Bob Jenkins?
I would say initially it was Gary Lee from a motorsports broadcaster standpoint.
Yeah.
I'd had a lot of experience in radio and thought I was pretty good at it and been told by a lot of people that I was good at it. But Gary taught me the language, how to deal with drivers, not to take things personally when they're in bad moods, when things didn't go well, and those sorts of things. Gary really mentored me as a motorsports broadcaster. Mike King gave me a lot of freedom in terms of what I did with the broadcast and how. But when I took over as the voice of the 500, Bob was certainly my mentor in that regard. And the thing that I always respected about Bob is that he never fancied himself as someone bigger than the event. Right. It was all about the show. And a quick story about Bob, he had retired, and we met in Florida where he used to spend the winter. And we met at a restaurant on a waterway down in just outside of Largo where he stayed. My wife and I got there before he did. And out walks this guy wearing deck shoes, a pair of swim trunks, and a T-shirt. He hadn't shaved in 4 or 5 days. And he wasn't that legendary motorsports broadcaster. He was just Bob. And I said, I want to emulate that part of his life too someday. So I miss him dearly because I would always run my pre-race ideas by him in March and April, and then I would always call him after the race was over, and we would debrief on it because his opinion meant about as much to me as anyone's for sure.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you step into this role, and you're getting to call the Indy 500. How many stations are we talking about?
Oh gosh, it varies. Once upon a time it was 400, 500, 600. We're up over 300 and some now. But the thing that we have come to connect to is because of the way technology has changed. There are literally, I'm estimating here, hundreds of thousands listening on satellite radio and on the various apps where you can find us: IndyCar Radio, IndyCarRadio.com, TuneIn, Mixler, all of those. So I think our audience is as large as it has ever been, but some of those entities don't necessarily provide numbers. But we know the response is certainly unbelievable, and it's very humbling for all of us.
And so what's it like on race day? Is it like, I say my act is kind of like juggling chainsaws.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you prepare for everything.
Mm-hmm.
You prepare for every situation.
Sure.
And then you just react, right?
Yeah, I think so. And about the only thing we script is our pre-race show.
Yeah.
That's the toughest part because we want to get into a lot of our trackside elements. We use you guys a lot on PA to intro that element because we feel like that gives people who aren't here more of a feeling of the fact that they're here. And plus, we want those transitions to be as clean as possible. And I would say that the first 50 laps or so, that, as you know, that's when your adrenaline's up here. Then you come back down over the midpoint of the race. And the last 25 or 30, it starts getting jacked back up again. And I can tell you, Bob, I agree with him. It's the hardest thing that I've ever done. But I thoroughly enjoy it. And Bob said he always enjoyed the television broadcast, maybe a little more, because he didn't have as much to do in terms of producing and directing, because in this chair with the radio network, you're doing everything. But the credit simply must go to the incredibly talented group of people. I'm batting somewhere in the middle of the lineup for the 27 Yankees. I mean, the broadcasters that we have and the behind the scenes people, and our network director, Chris Pollock, and I have been together over 30 years now. And there's just such a level of trust among all of us. And the thing that I respect the most about those that came before us, people marvel at what we do and how we do it. Well, we do it 16, 17 times a year.
Yeah.
Those guys used to do it once and do a really good job at it.
That's a really good point. You guys do the entire circuit. And back in the day, this is a one-off.
This was it.
This was a one-off, which is a pretty amazing what they're able to pull off.
Yeah, no question.
What's the grind like being on the road doing? I've done a few of those years like that. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, and I was dumb enough during a period of time for a couple of years to be a high school football head coach, which
I remember those days.
Yeah. So no, I enjoyed my time in coaching. I'm glad I've left that behind. And I guess for me, being an educator, teaching at Monrovia High School when I'm not doing this, a fortunate thing for me is the majority of our races are in the summertime when I'm out of school.
Yeah.
But I have to give a lot of credit to our administration, our principal, Mike Springer, who I've worked with for a number of years. They understand the value of me doing the things that I do, both here and with the IHSAA, the state championships that I do. And some of my students have gotten jobs and opportunities at Ball State and places like that because I bring them along with me, and it allows them to build a network at a very early age. So it's a lot to juggle, but the travel with both of our kids being grown now and us having grandchildren, my wife gets to go with me a lot, which I see that as a reward for her because so many years she stayed home to raise the kids while I was off doing this. And so it's nice for her to be able to go and us spend that time together on the road.
You were talking about being that kid from Indiana, I call this our sandbox. This is the playground where you and I grew up.
Yeah.
What's your emotions and energy like? Like we're taping this the week of the 500. What's your emotions like? How do you keep your emotions under control and not to get too caught up and wow, this is a really cool deal?
Yeah, I guess that 30 years on the network has allowed me to prepare myself leading up to it. I still won't sleep the night before because I'm sure you had that recurring nightmare.
I'm glad to hear you say that.
I'm sure you've had that recurring nightmare to where you oversleep and you can't get in here because we've all talked about that, and that hasn't happened yet. But I don't sleep much the night before. And really, because of the fact our schedule has been so busy with the Sanzio Grand Prix, and then I go to school in the morning, I come here from 3 to 6, and then we were here all day Saturday and Sunday, and then the practice session on Monday. I'm kind of looking forward to having a couple of days just to kind of recharge the batteries and rest and relax. But make no mistake, when I get here Friday, that's really when the adrenaline really starts getting pumped up, the anticipation, and that carries through Saturday and then on into Sunday. And there's just absolutely nothing like it in the world. And someone asked me a couple of months ago, do you still get as excited for your 31st as you did your first? And I said, yeah. And if I ever pull in here and that feeling has gone away, then I'll give it up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like you. If you don't feel that nervous energy and you're not anticipating the show, then it's time to back off the throttle. That's kind of how I got with my television job. I'm like, I've been doing this for 40 years. I describe it as eating ice cream. You eat a lot of ice cream. I've had every flavor of ice cream, and you get kind of burnt out on it. But this is a totally different thing, especially since we're from here. I want to talk to you about, like you talked about, you are the conduit to fans around the world. And so here you are trying to decide when do I go to the pits for an update? When do I... Is that you controlling?
Yeah, pretty much.
You're throwing the ball around?
I have Brian Livingston, who's been with the network over 40 years, and he is our pit producer. And I don't communicate with them during the race other than when there are pit stops underway. They are on what's called a separate channel from me, so I don't hear them. And Brian does a good job. We've worked together enough, and we have meetings and decide what we want and when. And we have some incredibly talented pit reporters that all get it and have done this before. And so they don't need a lot of direction. The only thing that I try to tell them, and this goes for practice or qualifying, let us know when you have something. Let us know when you have someone. When you have something, we're going to finish our point and then get it to you. But when you have someone, everybody knows, be quiet, because we don't want to hold drivers too long. But my communication is primarily with the four guys in the turns. We pick out battles, and if the leader's got a 10 or 12 car length lead, we'll go back 5 or 6 spots and we'll pick up a battle for 6th, which is compelling. But we have kind of an unspoken language and a synergy between all of us. And again, I credit it to the fact that we work together so much, because there's no lighting system. There's no clear indication for Nick to know when to start talking. He just knows me. He knows my cadence, and he knows when he can anticipate that. And then Michael can do the same with Nick and Jake. And I'm excited for Ryan Marine. He's going to be in turn 4. Chris Dinner had that job over 20 years and retired from it. And we put Ryan Marine there, and we think Ryan's going to do a great job. He's called turns for us before when we've had races away from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And my level of trust of him is as high as it was with Chris Dinner. And my philosophy is, between our turn announcers and our pit reporters, more of them and less of me is a good thing, because that way we're entertaining people and getting them information. And I've jokingly told our network director, Chris Pollock, I said, I'll be okay with that unless you want to pay me by the word. Then I might have to flip more in every now and then.
Yeah, that was an old Tom Carnegie line. Yeah. They don't pay me per word.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to put you on the spot here. Let's talk about the race. Let's switch gears and talk about the race. Give me your 5 to watch. Pretty
obviously
easy.
Alex Palou, that's low-hanging fruit. Bing. You know, I would have said Alexander Rossi. He's going to put a lot of faith in his team with having to go to a backup car. I felt good about O'Ward's chances on race day this year, because he's come so very, very close. I think David Malukas has been a wonderful add to Team Penske. I mean, the kid is just not intimidated at all by the stage that he's on. And I would say the drive for 5 would not be a shock, because Helio has expressed the kind of quiet confidence that he expressed when he won his 4th. And the one that I'm doing this in kind of reverse order.
Who's your dark horse?
I've always, but just going back to the test, I felt like that if there's ever going to be a year Connor Daly wins the Indy 500, it would be this year.
Can you imagine that?
And this is probably as stout a field of quote-unquote one-offs as we have ever had in this race. I mean, Ryan Hunter-Reay, a former champion's in this race too, and the list goes on and on and on. So I know how I always end this question, and I get this a lot with the interviews that I do. the beauty of this place and this race is the fact it's going to be a big story no matter who wins it because it's the Indy 500.
Amen to that, brother.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap it up right there.
Okay.
Now stay tuned.
Yeah, thank you for the greatest spectacle in racing.
Yeah, it's fun, man.
Yeah.
Here's to you and I getting to do this for another, 40 years. Come on, man. We can go a little longer. I got 41. How many you got? How many you got? You're in 30s?
I'm at 31.
We can get up to the 60s, can't we? Come on, brother. We're still young dogs.
It's not a matter of not being able to. It's the desire to. And I don't know if I got 10 more in me or not. I don't think that's in Chris's plan either for me to do 10 more. We'll see.
Mark Jaynes, the voice of the Indy 500 and around the world. Good luck on radio.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for watching and listening to Playmakers, brought to you by IBJ Media. I'm Dave Calabro. I hope you'll subscribe on YouTube or wherever else you get your podcast. Until next time, we'll see you later.